Hello, and thank you for listening to Thought Bubble. I'm your co-host, Chris.
And the other one is Ethan.
Yep, and the other one is Ethan. So, I suppose this being the first episode and all, we should explain the structure of our podcast before we dive into it.
Why not?
All right. This podcast is split into 3 segments. Our first segment, we will be discussing the comic books that we read during that month. Our second segment, we will be discussing comic book news. And our third segment, we will discuss comic book adaptations. We release this podcast on the first Saturday of every month and record the Thursday before. We may miss a little bit of news in that 2-day gap. If we do miss that, you can be sure that it will be covered in the next month's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose the way we like to structure segment 1 is we will start with event comics and then move into non-event comics, and we will go week by week within those 2 categories. That being said, let's just dive right into segment 1 with week 1 of the newest Marvel event, Absolute Carnage, which so far has been amazing. So
yes, very good.
Very good. So let's discuss the first issue of Absolute Carnage.
I was not expecting it to be as good as it was, simply because it's a spiritual successor to Maximum Carnage, which was not a bad event, but just kind of there for marketing's sake. And so I expected this to be kind of a copy of that same thing. So, yeah.
Right now, and I haven't read Maximum Carnage myself. One thing our listeners may want to know about me is that I am very new to the comic book scene. You know, I read some here and there as a kid, but it actually only has been within the past couple months that I've started really collecting. So, personally, I think that's going to be very fun for our listeners to get. If one of our listeners is a diehard comic book fan, maybe. So, but yes, everything you said about Absolute Carnage 1, for sure. Carnage is so well written.
Yeah, he's scarier than he's been in any other instance that I've remembered.
Absolutely. So scary was exactly what I was going to go for. The bit with Norman Osborn at the end, and they show this off in a few of the other tie-ins, and the second one showing a little competition-ish, a little competitiveness between Norman and Cletus as they both see themselves as the true host of the Carnage symbiote.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes from here.
Mm-hmm. I think it could very much, if I can make a theory, I would think that we'll be reaching the climax and the action is going to get broken by Norman jumping in and perhaps even killing Cletus.
I have to imagine Cletus will die again at the end of this.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it could be a permanent death this time.
I would hope
It's hard to say those kinds of things about comics. Characters come back all the time. But, I mean, with Norman already essentially believing he's Cletus, it's easier to replace him.
They've remolded him, and they even give him, with the symbiote attached, I'm not spoiling too much here, they give him the same design as Cletus used to have.
Which I have to say, Norman has taken on so many roles throughout the years. When he started as Green Goblin, he was Iron Patriot for a bit. Now he's Carnage. What else has he been? I just know I'm missing something.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know you're missing something too.
For sure. Ready to hop into week 2?
I suppose so.
All right, so we got 2 tie-ins in week 2. Absolute Carnage Scream #1 and Absolute Carnage Separation Anxiety, which was a one-shot. Scream #1 was not good.
Between these 2, I was way more excited for Scream, but it was really poorly written, and nothing felt like it mattered.
I didn't know who the characters were, and the comic assumed that I did, which has not really been a problem that I've had with comic books very often. Usually, you can jump in, especially at the beginning of a limited run. You can jump in and understand who the characters are. That was just a huge issue I had with it. I didn't know who anyone was, and I didn't care about what they were doing.
With Marvel, that's almost never a problem, especially with number ones. Unless you jump in the middle of a story arc with Marvel, I feel like you can tend to figure things out after a little bit without too much of a problem. But with this one, I can definitely see it being hard to understand what's going on.
And since we're recording this on Thursday, we have had the first week's comics of September,
Yes.
but we won't be discussing them. We'll wait until the next episode. But I do want to mention Scream number 2, vast improvement. I actually found myself enjoying reading that one.
I haven't read it yet. I actually didn't pick that one up, but I might go back to pick it up. Yeah.
But we'll save that conversation for the next episode. Now, separation anxiety.
That one, the separation anxiety was not quite as good as Absolute Carnage number 1, but kind of close.
Very close. Yeah. It was incredible. A very nice, self-contained story. And I didn't know. I knew vaguely about the Life Foundation symbiotes, but I didn't really know who they were individually. Yeah. But that didn't matter at all because the story was really well written. They were introduced as if they were new characters. It focused around characters that kind of just existed for that one comic.
It didn't rely on you knowing, but I feel like you might get a little more out of it if you know.
Which is usually the case with comics, but yes. Definitely pick up separation anxiety if you haven't.
It continues the horror themes from the main.
Very, very nice. Week 3, the only tie-in we got was Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool number 1.
I did not read that.
You did not read that. I did. I don't know how to feel about it. It's an alright Deadpool story. Deadpool is written well in it, but Carnage lost the scary part that he had.
I saw that happening. That's part of why I didn't pick this one up.
I can see what they're going for. I understand why Deadpool's getting his own tie-in. In the end of the comic, Carnage realizes that Deadpool has bonded with 4 symbiotes, which means he has 4 codices in him, which makes him a very nice target for Carnage. So I get why he has his own series, but I don't know if it should have been written as much from a Deadpool perspective. I think it should have been more of a Carnage comic that had Deadpool in it.
I haven't read it, and I'm going to agree with you.
And my big problem with Deadpool comics recently has been they've just been dropping in quality. You got rid of a ton of your older comics.
Oh yeah, he has them now,
and gave them to me. And he gave me a bunch of his Deadpool comics. And I think a big problem I have is the lack of the internal dialogue. That added so much to those comics. And now it's not the only problem.
There's plenty of problems.
But I feel like that has made a large contribution to the issues.
Another thing with Deadpool recently, I feel, is because of the success of the comedic focus of the movies, they've kind of made that the sole focus in a lot of ways, instead of just like a big part of the focus, but not the focus itself.
Absolutely. And the movies are great.
Yeah, especially the second one. I really like the second one.
Really? That's a very interesting thing. I mean, I like the second one too, but most people, myself included, think the first one is better.
I understand that. One. Yeah.
So, week 4. Week 4 was kind of a big one for Absolute Carnage. We got 4 comics, including Absolute Carnage number 2, which not as good as 1, but still pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a very good comic. I was kind of hoping it would be a little bit better, simply because of how good 1 was.
It was kind of hard to live up to.
It's important to realize that number 1 was like an oversized comic, and this was more like, this was bigger than normal, but not like near as oversized.
It was more like the size of a one-shot.
Yeah.
Whereas number 1 was just huge.
Number 1 was $8.
Number 1 was $8.
Number 2 was $5.
$5. You're right. So, which is actually more than a typical one-shot. No, it's not.
It depends.
It depends. Most one-shots I've got, though, are $5. So I don't know where I was coming from. While a typical one is $4. So a one-shot gets you a little bit more. So, and it looks like the rest of the series will continue that size. So that's a lot.
I liked this story, but I am a little bit worried in the fact that it does seem like it's going to be fragmenting a little more into the tie-ins, and I feel like anyone reading the main story if they do what I think they might be trying to do, I'm a little worried that it'll be a little harder
Now,
to read.
I think what Donny Cates said though is
Yeah.
the essentials are just Absolute Carnage mainline and the Venom tie-ins, and you'll be
Yes.
good if you only read those.
Mm-hmm.
Which, speaking of, let's jump to Venom 17.
Sure.
I didn't care for it.
Yeah.
Focused on his son brother,
Mhm.
which is what I'm going to call. I don't remember his name. I haven't been following Venom. I might start though because I do enjoy Donny Cates' writing. He did a great job on that free comic book day, which was my first introduction to his writing, and I've been, like we said, I've been loving Absolute Carnage so far.
He's been doing a good job with Silver Surfer Black as well,
Okay.
Which I feel like might tie it back into Absolute Carnage simply because of one element in there, but I'm not going to say it's going to because I don't know for sure yet.
Okay. I haven't been reading that one, so.
Yeah.
But Venom number 17 hardly had Venom in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it takes place during Absolute Carnage number 2, and Venom is already doing something in that comic. So Venom number 17 focuses on the kid. They're in the base with where they're with the machine that's supposed to rip the codices out of people without killing them. And actually, the 4 Life Foundation symbiotes attack, and that's the idea behind it. I just, it's just, again, it's surrounding characters I don't know much about. So, and since this is, jumping into the middle of the series, they're not really taking the time to explain it to me.
Yeah.
So,
I
know who he is, but I don't care about him yet.
I can see that being a problem.
And then we have Lethal Protectors number 1, which is another one you didn't pick up.
Mm-hmm.
That one was weird to me. It was a good story, but it focuses on Misty Knight, who is not on the cover at all. And instead, the cover has Iron Fist, Morbius, Cloak and Dagger. None of them appear in this comic, which is really strange to me. I'm sure they'll appear in the other 2 going forward, but
it's important to realize he's talking about the main cover too, not the variant. The main cover should represent the comic.
Yes. It's just strange. I wouldn't even be bothered that much if it had them and Misty Knight was still on it. Mm-hmm. But the fact that she is the main character of this particular issue and is not featured anywhere on the cover.
The cover centers Iron Fist. So
yes. Yeah. So that's strange. And then one we both read, Miles Morales. How you share your thoughts on it? You have strong opinions.
Okay, so this was one of the tie-ins I was looking forward to the most. And like with Scream, I was pretty disappointed. But with Scream, it was more like I feel nothing here. With Miles Morales, it was like basically rehashing things we already read in number 2, and anything that wasn't in number 2, I could already infer had happened. There was also a few panels where the lettering was weird, where like they acted like the characters were supposed to be screaming, but it would make it look like they're whispering. The art's very good, though. I'll give it that.
It is very good art, and that is something I forgot to mention when you were talking about Absolute Carnage number 2.
Yeah.
That last page where, going a little bit in spoilers, if you don't want to hear spoilers, skip like 30 seconds forward or something. But that last page where he's calling for like Eddie not to leave and Carnage is pulling him in, I felt that. Yeah. That was really well done. Okay, spoilers over now. But the Miles Morales number 1. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I can understand why they did it though, because let's say someone doesn't really care about Carnage, but they care about Miles Morales, and they just want to follow his tie-in. I've done the same thing with events before. War of the Realms earlier this year, I didn't pick up a single.
Neither of us cared about War of the Realms.
None of us did. I did pick up the Journey into Mystery tie-in series simply because of the writers, the McElroy family. I love them. They're just such funny people, and they worked with such a great cast of characters, So that I picked that up, and then I also picked up a one shot from that. But that's all I picked up from War of the Realms, so I can understand not wanting to follow the main part of an event but follow a particular timing.
With here, it is a little weirder though because Miles Morales is part of the Spider-Man mythos already. So
True.
you would probably want to read Absolute Carnage if you cared about him being part of that mythos. But I mean, there's probably an area of fans that
Yeah,
you know.
to each their own.
Yeah.
I mean, the comic could have been better, but it does allow you to only have that series. So
I think okay, if you want to read this and you're already reading the main line, keep in mind the rest of the Miles Morales tie-ins have not been released yet. I would suggest jumping in on the second one. I mean, I'm stating this blindly, but I can tell that there's going to be original content there. So, yeah,
hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for Absolute Carnage. So let's move into our just regular non-event comics we picked up. Week 1.
Oh, this was all me.
Week 1 was all you. I didn't have anything I picked up in week 1 aside from Absolute Carnage, so I'll let you go for a few minutes.
Champions number 8. So Miss Marvel has temporarily stepped down from the Champions, and she leaves Viv in charge, which, for those of you who don't know, is the Vision's daughter. And the team is basically having to readjust to her leadership, and she is kind of overworking herself with a bunch of missions. And while this is happening, there's also in the previous issue, to oversimplify this, Nova is looking for his helmet and found that it was back on Earth after he was searching in space. So we get to see him kind of try and find that helmet. And there was a thing that bothered me a little bit, but that's in spoiler territory. And if you're worried about it, don't be, because the person is clearly being controlled by someone else. Like, just look at the silhouette and you'll know who it is. Well, even if you don't know who it is, it's not her. So don't worry.
So the thing about Champions is I haven't read any of this particular run of Champions, but I've read some of the first run.
I like Champions. They're a good team.
Yes, I love the idea behind Champions, and I would be reading this run if I had been into actually like seriously collecting comics when it started. But here it has 9 came out this week.
Yeah.
So it has one issue left.
One issue left in this run.
I don't see the point in jumping in. I might pick up the trade paperbacks later on down the line, but I'm hoping that there will be another volume somewhat soon.
It kind of sucks too, because there was like a lot of build up for future like arcs that were clearly being like very well planned early on in the series, and then now Jim's being told he has to quickly wrap up the series. It shows. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. But yeah. Oh, I guess I have to move on.
Yeah, to the next you have to move on.
This is all Immortal Hulk 22. So this is part of an arc. So it's kind of hard to target this one specifically, but all you really need to know is that the government, they want the Hulk tracked down and found and destroyed because they see him as a threat. That's been going on through the rest of those Immortal Hulk comics.
So a typical Hulk story.
Typical Hulk story, yes. But yeah. But now he is like truly immortal. So thus the Immortal Hulk name. So they can't really properly kill him. They did recently send a newer abomination after him, and that didn't work. They thought that would kill him, but it didn't. And now he is basically, to oversimplify things again, he is going with his crew to basically tear up Area 51, which it's a little. The timing is funny.
It is, yeah,
because of the meme.
The meme, yeah.
But it's clearly not intended that way, because this was made like before that meme started.
Of course, but it is funny.
Yeah.
So just remember, all you out there that will be raiding Area 51, Hulk will be there. Let him take charge.
Hulk will be there. So be safe. Don't get smashed. Yeah. Oh yeah. So the next comic, Invisible Woman number 2. It's a good comic. I didn't think it would be as good as it was. So we get to see a little bit of a team up between Invisible Woman and Black Widow.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And they're on a little bit of a mission. There's a really nice scene where there's a drinking contest between one bad guy's thugs and Invisible Woman, and uh, so a lot of times in Fantastic Four, you'll have a writer who doesn't really know how to write her, and she just comes off kind of weak. That's not the case here because clearly the writer cares about Invisible Woman.
I mean,
So
they're
yeah.
giving her own series.
About time.
Quick question. I'm not one who follows the series. Is this an ongoing series or is this just a limited run?
It's a limited run. I cannot remember how many issues it is.
Okay. I would guess 6 or 8. That's a typical amount right. For a solo limited run. So let's move into week 2. This is, again, very heavily based on your reads. I did pick up one comic outside of Absolute Carnage, but it's one that we both picked up. How about we start with that one?
Sure.
Ironheart number 9. You're a huge fan of Ironheart.
Yes, I am.
She's one of your favorite characters.
She is.
You talk about her so much that I was like, hey, I should hop in to this series.
Not a good time to hop in.
And see if I want to read it. Exactly. Not a great time to hop in. It is in the middle of an arc.
Yes.
She felt off character based on what you've sent about her.
Yes, I sometimes we'll send some screenshots of some comics to each other.
Mm-hmm. We like to just send screenshots in the group chat that we have with some friends of ours. Mm-hmm. That we're pretty much the only 2 active people in. I mean, there's at least in that channel.
At that channel, yes.
But yes, this was not a great one to hop into. She felt out of character. She felt ruder than I had come to understand who she was. There's a part where she just flat out, like Tony's telling her something, and she just flat out says, "I don't care," and that felt weird. I understood when she was arguing with Shuri. There was a good reason. That
actually felt
and
like it worked.
And that was nice because it paid off in the comic later when they sorted it out and had to work together.
Yeah, but I do feel like the pacing could have been better in this one as well.
Sure. There's a very sweet moment where like a building is, being destroyed in Wakanda. And they're in Wakanda. Should clarify that. And Ironheart flies in to rescue this child and pull her, and she tells the child to come towards her, but the child doesn't understand English. Mm-hmm. So Shuri says in their native language, and forgive me, I don't know what the native language of Wakanda is. I know Wakandan isn't a language. They use an African language. I'm just not sure which one. But she says something to this child, and then the child goes towards Ironheart. Mm-hmm. And later, when they're done with the rescue, Ironheart says to Shuri, "What did you tell her?" And Shuri says, "I told her you were my sister."
Yeah,
I just thought that was really cute.
Yeah. I do feel like there were, other than the characterization problem and the pacing problem, some of the art was a little off though. Like Tony Stark in the beginning, he didn't look right. He looked a little funky. He looks a lot younger, and his mustache looked kind of fake.
So I'm gonna give this series a few more issues, give it a chance to see if I want to follow it.
So I know there are people who will disagree with me here, but I think the Bendis run of Ironheart I know it wasn't called Ironheart, but I don't care. Was definitely better than this run. This run was a lot better at the start. It got a little weird. I think basically what happened was that she might not have planned things out the way that they ended up, and she had to reschedule some things.
Yeah, because she's a good writer.
Yeah,
she is a good writer. The first thing I read from her was she did the first arc in the new line of Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man and Miss Marvel, and that was super fun.
She is new to comics, but she has written several other things before comics.
So I would just say that maybe this series is a little difficult for her, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's a bad writer.
Yeah.
Looks like the rest of this week is all you.
There's a lot of comics. Okay.
Don't worry. Very, very soon you'll get to hear more of my wonderful voice. I'll have a lot more to say later.
So, Amazing Spider-Man 27. Let's see, which one was that? Oh, yes, it was that one. Okay. So There's a new group of villains that has uh, organized itself, run by the current Beetle, not the same as the old Beetle, and so are trying to get back at Boomerang, who, if you are not aware, has had somewhat of a redemptive arc recently. Um, and so basically, they kind of wreck some of the Feast Center as a result, which has some ramifications. Um, and yeah, basically, it's sort of a team up fight with Spider Man and Boomerang versus this other team. And I guess I can spoil some of it because the other comic is later in the month, but I'll wait for that one to spoil anything from this one, I guess. 13 is or Fantastic Four 13, I mean, is the battle that they've been hyping up between Thing and the Immortal Hulk. Uh, it was revealed that the Immortal Hulk was being controlled by the Puppet Master, which, if you don't know, is the father of uh, Alicia, which is the Thing's wife. Um, so basically, he's petty that the Thing married his daughter, so he sent the Hulk after him. And yeah, a battle ensues, and it's pretty good. Dan Slott did a good job. I have problems with his writing every once in a while, but he's doing a good job here, so that's good.
It's strange how inconsistent his writing can be.
He's
He can be
very-
really good and he can be really bad.
Yeah, I don't understand how that happens, but whatever.
Yeah.
Flash 76.
Yes, The Flash. We're not just a Marvel podcast.
Yeah.
We read other comics too.
This month was very Marvel heavy.
And both of us
Yeah.
prefer Marvel, so
Yes.
we read a lot more Marvel. But we do like DC, some IDW.
Yeah, I like some DC. I like some IDW. I like some Valiant. I didn't read any IDW this month, but yeah, the Flash number 76. So this is the first Flash comic after the year one arc, which was very good. I would definitely recommend it. And it acknowledges that year one arc as him reflecting on his past for a little while, which I like, so it keeps it like as part of the main series. Basically, Flash has had some tension with some of the other speedster characters. They've kind of butted a little bit of heads, so he kind of tries to make it up to them. And he has a new sort of Batcave-ish thing, only for the Flash, that he like presents them with as like a little base of operations, and it's very nice. There is another Flash comic later this week, so I'll kind of conclude what happens in that one with the other one, so that I'm not spoiling this one for anyone who wants to read this one, if that makes sense. Two more for this week.
Yeah, so if you want to read that comic, stop listening to the podcast and read it before he talks about the next one.
Same for these other the Amazing Spider-Man.
The other bi-weekly series.
Yes, and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 10. I do believe that was where they wrapped up the previous arc. Yes, because there were two this month. It makes it a little hard to remember which is which sometimes. So they essentially they wrapped up this previous arc that was sort of used as a bit of a redemption arc for, well, not a full redemption, but crap. It was one of the Prowlers. I can't remember the name of this one off the top of my head. But this Prowler was kind of trying to change his ways, but things kept happening. But he basically teamed up with Spider-Man in this arc, and it was a very nice end for him. And we also got a nice little bit of feat of strength for Spider-Man. Not a huge thing, but it was nice. So yeah, definitely don't jump into this one. 11 is probably a better place to jump in than 10, because this is part of an arc. But yeah. Miles Morales number 9. This one was very good. So this is also part of an arc, so it's not one I would suggest jumping into. basically, there's been this group that we still don't really know much about, who kidnapped Miles and put him in an area that he was unaware of and ran a bunch of like abusive tests on him. And we get to see his dad, which for those of you who have only watched Into the Spider Verse, he and don't know this, he was a Shield agent before he was a police officer. So um, he has training in breaking into places. So he and Uncle Aaron, which is alive because of reasons.
It's a comic book. They're always alive because of reasons.
Yeah. Um, they basically team up to save Miles from this place, and Miles is very broken at this point. It's kind of depressing and sad, but it feels good to see them team up to save their family members. So that's nice.
And the next issue is supposed to be a big deal.
Yes,
Miles Morales' 250th issue that he's been in across all of his
So they are marketing that heavily, but I'm not sure if that's a good place to jump in. Just so you know, because it seems like it might be connected to this arc or previous arcs. So
I could also see them taking like a break and making it more of like, just like a solo.
We don't know what they're going to do with it yet, so we can't really tell you that much. Right. But it's definitely plot important.
Mm-hmm. Week 3, I finally some more stuff. The stuff I read, I have more than what Ethan read, which is different. We both read Ghost Spider #1.
Mm-hmm.
Way better than we expected.
Yeah.
Way better than you expected. I didn't really have a strong opinion. I've always loved Spider-Man, and I love the idea of the variant spider people. And so I saw, hey, Gwen is getting a new series. This has got to be a good jumping in point for her character. And it was.
Yeah.
It was a good jumping in point for her character. And
definitely a very good jumping on point. I was not expecting it to be good, partially because Spider-Gwen, the majority of that series was very self-contained, occasionally jumping over like between universes, but like for the most part it was self-contained to its own universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed them to be a lot more creative and do things they couldn't really do with the main universe.
Mm-hmm. Right, so the idea here is in Earth 65, her home universe, her identity is public.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to attend school as if she were a normal student. So she travels to Earth 616, our main universe, to attend college.
On paper, that sounds a little dumb, but it's written well enough that I don't care.
Mm-hmm. And her idea currently is she'll live in Earth 65, then go to Earth 616 for college. If I had to make a prediction, something is going to get her stuck in 616.
I'm a little worried about where it's going from here, but this issue itself
at least temporarily, something is going to get her stuck in 616.
I don't want her to be stuck there forever.
However, I can tell it can't be a permanent thing because they're not ignoring Earth 65. They kept cutting back to Earth 65 to show.
And I appreciated that. I was afraid that they would like try to ignore it entirely.
Mm-hmm. So they're not trying to make her a 616 character.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, I think, your biggest concern.
Yes, it was my biggest concern.
So it worked for Miles when they did it, but that was because they kind of merged the two universes together anyway.
With Miles, it was a little weird, but it still worked. It definitely worked.
The one thing I found strange about Ghost Spider #1 is Miles is on the cover and he's not in the comic, but it's a wonderful cover.
It's a very good cover,
and so I'm not really that bothered by it. The next one I have here on my list is History of the Marvel Universe #2.
Oh, it's the first one that you've gotten in a while that I haven't.
Uh-huh. So, aside from those absolute tie-ins. But, History of the Marvel Universe #2. I picked this up with #1 at the same time. Very nice writing. I really like what they're going for. The idea is... So, the way the Marvel Universe works is it's cyclical. The universe ends, and then it's reborn, and Galactus is left over from the previous universe and whatever. So the idea behind this one is this cycle is about to end. And the only two beings left alive are Galactus and Reed Richards. And Reed asks Galactus to help him remember everything. That's what he says. He says, help me remember. What do you want to remember? Everything. And then it's Galactus telling telling Reed and the audience the entire history of the Marvel Universe.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was very interesting about number 2 is they added a new piece to Marvel lore. They invented this new war, the Xian Kong War, as a replacement for all those characters who have origins from a war, like Punisher or Iron Man. Because the problem is with the way the shifting timeline of the Marvel Universe works, they had to keep changing which war they came from. Now they don't have to anymore. It's just the Xian Kong War.
That helps with the sliding timescale problem.
It helps continuity exist. Now, Captain America is still from World War II. That's not changing.
Yeah, that can't change.
You can't change that at all. But so that's how that works. So it's a nice series. They have bits at the end of the book that I haven't been reading that essentially says the same thing, but in a more written, directly to the audience type way, and it tells you what comics you can find certain things in.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Next, I have Spider-Man: City at War #6. Thank goodness that's over.
I read the first one; it was not good.
City at War. Listen, here's the thing. I love Spider-Man PS4. It's great. It's an amazing game. It characterizes Spider-Man near perfectly. Yuri Lowenthal, amazing choice to do the voice of Peter Parker.
If I had a PS4, I would definitely agree.
I've been reading recent Spider-Man comics and putting Yuri Lowenthal's voice in when I read Spider-Man's lines. That's how good he is for the character.
He's a good voice actor for Spider-Man. He's probably one of the best voices for Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. But City at War, I don't know. I just feel like Hopeless, which is his nickname, the writer for the series, I feel like Hopeless just doesn't know how to adapt someone else's story very well. I think that's his problem. He's not coming up with his own original story, and he's just committing this story into a comic, and it's not being done well. The covers are nice. The series has nice covers. If they're a little too detailed for my tastes, but I can't say that they're bad art.
I want to say that number 4 had this retro game variant that I almost picked up because of the cover.
I think they all have some retro game variant to them. But they were
you
different.
See, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I didn't even notice because I just don't care about the series because the first one was so bad.
But in the next week, they started releasing Velocity, and we'll talk about that soon, and that's great. And that's the same writer. But first, let's finish off our week 3 pickups. You had one more.
Oh, yes. Tony Stark Iron Man number 15. I thought this is also Dan Slott. For the most part, it was pretty good. Though there was one thing I didn't really like, and that's that they basically brought back a character just to kill them off. And I'm not going to go into who it is, but I was very happy to see them back, and then they just wasted potential for that character. And but for the most part, this is a very good comic. There's like this whole debate that started because of essentially the fact that AIs are causing damage, and people haven't come to a legal agreement on whether the maker of the AI or the AI itself, if it's autonomous at least, is responsible for the damage. So it kind of goes into that debate. And he's being like roasted in the media because of the things he's saying, essentially. It's a pretty good comic, and it seems to be leading into an arc, and that arc I'm definitely interested in.
Yeah, they've been heavily pushing. They were pushing number 16 for a while.
That one's going to be important. Well, if I say it, it won't really be a spoiler now that the cover is everywhere. But I'll not say it just in case, because there's a villain that's a little bit of a surprise if you don't see him coming. That kind of pops up in the last little bit. So it's nice to see him. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go into week number 4. And if you're not a comic fan and not someone who regularly follows comics, you may not know that week 4 is a pretty big week. That's when the bigger series like to drop, and you get a lot of comics in that.
You see, with the last week of every month, the publishers, Marvel is especially guilty of this. They like to push more books out just so they can say that their month was stronger sales wise. I don't know why they do it exactly. It doesn't make sense, but
Well, and something I've noticed just a little bit from like seeing people discuss it on Twitter, though, it usually is week 4. If there's 5 weeks in the month, the 5th week will usually be a slower week. Well, if there's 5 Wednesdays, I should say, in a month. But week 4, we have a nice long list. So how about you start, Ethan, with Amazing Spider-Man 28.
Alrighty. Okay, so this one picks up where the last one left off. So now I can spoil the last one. So basically, Boomerang gets kidnapped, and Spider-Man's all like, "Oh no, I don't know where this guy is. I need to find him." And basically, he remembers that he finds a way to track him. I'm not going to try and explain it. I'm not going to waste time. So while that's happening, I'm blanking on their name. The team of the team of bad guys. They basically have him trapped, and the Beetle wants to turn in Boomerang to the Kingpin, and so but she doesn't want the rest of her team to know, because the rest of the team just wants to get revenge on Boomerang for hitting on them, basically, in the past. But yeah, so Spider-Man comes in, and there's a big thing with Kingpin SWAT troops, and yeah, and then there's a nice little talk between Spider-Man and Boomerang, and we don't know what Boomerang answers the question with, but it's going to lead into things in the future, I'm sure, because it's definitely there's been sprinkles of it being important. So, yeah.
Nice. So our next comic is one we both read, Batman/Superman #1.
Yes.
So here's a stance I have. I don't know if this is a popular. Well, the first part I think is pretty popular. The second part, I say, maybe a bit more controversial. My first part, I don't like Superman. He's boring. He's overpowered. He's only, it's really telling that almost every Superman story has to involve kryptonite because he needs to be weakened.
My problem is not with my main problem with Superman is not Superman. My main problem with Superman is kryptonite. Kryptonite. Yeah. He himself has a good. I like his personality. You can do some interesting stories with that. But the writers over the years have kind of overpowered him, and kryptonite.
Yeah, they just keep adding more and more powers, and
kryptonite is a problem because it's every time you bring it in, it just feels extremely forced. It doesn't feel like a legitimate thing that should be his weakness. It just. We need to find a new weakness for him, I think. I know some of you might be mad by me saying that, but I don't like kryptonite. No. It's cheap. It's a cheap tactic.
Now, for the second part of my statement, that may be the more controversial part. I don't care about Batman that much either. I like him.
Ooh, this is gonna make some people mad.
Yeah, it is. I like Batman. Don't get me wrong. What he stands for, and I like what Superman stands for also, but I just don't care about him that much. I guess he just doesn't often feel that interesting. There are exceptions. I mean, the Dark Knight trilogy it characterizes Batman amazingly. And there's still comics here and there. I've read some of Detective Comics 1000, and there were a couple stories in there that I really liked. But just for the most part, he's just kind of a there character.
I'm not too crazy about Batman either. I think some of the best. I feel like he's often characterized really well in Batman the Animated Series and some other adaptations, almost better than he is in the source material sometimes. I'm not saying that's always the case, but yeah, he's easy to make bland. He's kind of a product of another time, it feels like, just like Superman is. And
they're old characters.
Yeah.
It can be hard to adapt them to a modern age. Now, the reason I say those two things, though, I want you to know my opinions on the characters individually, because I absolutely love them when they're together. Batman and Superman are characters that just work so well together.
Mm-hmm.
They have so much in common, and they have so much not in common.
Yes.
And
I can agree with that.
And this comic is no exception. They work, they are a team, and I'm excited to see where the series goes, continuing with them as a team. Now, the concept behind this one is the Batman Who Laughs has come out of the dark multiverse and is infecting some heroes. We've been revealed who 4 of those heroes are, but 2 of them are still being kept a secret. And this comic only reveals one of them, which I won't spoil just yet, but I know that particular character was Ethan's reason, primary reason.
That was why I picked it up. I'm a fan of said character.
And the story begins with Batman Who Laughs infecting the Superman of a different universe, and that is why Superman is being pulled into this story, because that Superman comes into the main universe and kidnaps a child, and people think it's Superman. So now Batman has a stake in this because it's against the Batman Who Laughs, but Superman has a stake in this to clear his name.
I love some of the conversations that happen between the two, especially when you get to hear that. Like, I also like when you hear their thoughts and they're like clashing with each other, but like also not in a way.
It's very nice.
The characterization is very strong here, and I usually don't feel that as strong for most DC titles I've written.
And the big issue, DC doesn't focus on much about their heroes as people. It focuses more on their heroics. Whereas that's the big difference between DC and Marvel. Marvel lets you see Peter Parker outside of being Spider-Man. Whereas DC kind of just focuses on Batman, and you don't see too much of Bruce Wayne.
I wouldn't go quite that far, but I agree with what you're trying to say there. You definitely see plenty of Bruce Wayne in Batman, but the focus of DC heroes tends to be more of like building them up as like mythological like stories in a way,
which can be fine, if that's your kind of thing. But personally, that's why I prefer Marvel.
Yeah, I think that's a big that's a big contributing factor to why I prefer Marvel.
The next comic on the list we have is Dr. Mirage #1.
Hello, Valiant.
Which you read.
This is a very good comic. Okay. First things first, the coloring in this is amazing. The color palette is beautiful. If there's one thing I have to say about it, it's that. But other than that, okay. I'm not super huge into Valiant. I've never read anything with this character in it before. I know that she's existed before, but I don't know anything much about her. Now, Valiant tends to have a problem where they... like, say, even on a number 1, sometimes they'll have a problem where it won't be easy to jump in to their universe. It feels a little awkward. That was not a problem here, even though I've not read from this character before. So, essentially, I'll just refer to her as Mirage. So, she could see, like, the dead before, but she hasn't been able to in a long time. One of the people that was dead that she used to be able to talk to was her dead husband, but since she's no longer like seeing these like spirits anymore, she feels very lonely. And she tries to like use a spell to like fix things, but it doesn't work. And someone basically comes to her house and says that the husband basically told her to come, and like there's a little bit of an exposition dump, but it's done well. And the characters are likable. And I'm not going to spoil like what's going on, but it's an interesting scenario that's being put forward here. So it was a very good comic. One of the higher ranking ones this month, I think.
Okay. That's something I know nothing about.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I've read a Valiant comic. I think I own a couple from a free comic book day a few years ago, but I don't think I've even read them.
The most iconic Valiant character is Bloodshot. So
I've heard that name. That's about all I can say. So I've heard the name. That's about it. I think he's getting a movie. I think I heard something about that.
I'm not sure if that's true or not, but okay.
But that don't take my word for that. Looks like the next few on our list are from you. So
All right,
I'll let
back
you
to
keep
DC
going.
with Flash number 77. Okay, so Black Flash is trying to kill some individuals, and Flash is like, "Oh no, we can't let this happen." Along with Kid Flash and this one other Flash that I can't remember the name off the top of my head. So
There are a lot of
there's a
Flashes.
lot to keep track of, and I'm a Spider-Man guy, so yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting scenario. There's not much I can say without spoiling details, but the story arc we're in between the previous one and this one is called "The Speed Force is Dying." So that, yeah.
Okay. I haven't really read any Flash comics, but I love the show.
I've not watched the show.
I'm tempted to jump into Flash, but the fact that it's a bi-weekly series is putting me off a little bit. That seems a little too frequent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You see, my big problem with DC, and Flash is part of this problem, but Flash is one of the characters I like a little more than most of the others. I'm still not a huge fan of him, but anyways, DC, they tend to do these universal like continuity hard reset things.
Yeah, and I see where you're going with this. Yeah. Flash has caused quite a few of those.
Yes, and it makes it hard to know what's still canon and what's no longer canon anymore, and it makes the timeline very confusing. Yes, Marvel does do contrived things every once in a while, but they don't usually do this. They've never really done a like line-wide hard reset.
You may want to hold
well,
back on making that statement because House of X looks like it's doing something pretty big. Now that is more isolated to the X-Men lore.
I said line-wide,
but the X-Men lore is a pretty big part of Marvel, so it's not line-wide, but it looks like it's going to be a big deal. And neither of us are reading House of X.
Yeah, I tried number one. Everyone seems to be praising it. I don't care for it. I'm sorry.
I'm just not. I'm not an overall X-Men fan. I have a few X-Men that I care about specifically. Like Wolverine is an obvious one. Cyclops I care about sometimes. Yeah.
DC tends to do these big reset things. Marvel tends to like the whole legacy continues, but they will sometimes like do a soft reset where it's not a firm like like this isn't canon anymore, like this whole like huge chunk of everything. But yeah, they might have done it before. Might have, but they don't really make a habit of doing these like big things like that. But that's not a problem in this comic, so it's good.
Good. You got
Friendly Neighborhood. Okay, so this is an MJ themed comic, and it's nice to see MJ in the main role.
Nice. She's about to get her own series.
Yes,
soon,
she
isn't
is. She? Yes.
They've been pushing out a lot of variant covers, or maybe they haven't started releasing those yet, but I've been seeing them online. A lot of variant covers for like every series. Every series is getting a variant cover with MJ on it.
Yeah.
I really like the one that is on the Miles.
I have not seen it.
Actually, I don't know if, now that I think about it, I don't know if that's actually a variant cover for the Miles comic or if it's a variant cover for the MJ comic that has Miles in it.
I haven't really like looked at the what's coming up that much. Usually I'm a little better about that, but I'm not sure. I'll just say that. But yeah, it's nice to see her in a starring role. It's a little refreshing. The cover doesn't necessarily happen, but the cover's more symbolic, so it works. We kind of get her see. This actually does tie a little bit into War of the Realms, but you don't have to read War of the Realms to understand it. And we do get a little Miles in there as well, but it's not like, oh, Miles swoops in and like solves all the problems entirely. He's more feels like an equal player in the story. So even though he's not an equal player in the story, he's there for like a small portion of the story. But it's nice to see those two interact a little bit. So yeah, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's me again.
It is you again.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'll hop in a moment. But
Okay, so another Valiant comic, Killers #2. I'm not really big on anti-heroes and all that, but this comic, I'm intrigued enough to keep reading it. Um, so Valiant has this thing where there's like a series of like ninja themed characters, and they each are like a letter. They have like a letter assigned to them. Like Ninja K has a lot of his own comics, but yeah, I don't really know anything about that area of the lore. But I still decided to jump in here anyways, and it's okay. It's all right.
All right.
I kind of like Ninja G. She's cool. Um, I like to see where they're going with this. Oh, actually, this isn't. I'm gonna jump back to Doctor Mirage for a
Okay.
second.
Go ahead.
At the end of that comic, there's a little bit of like a preview for an upcoming Valiant comic. It's a new Bloodshot comic. I don't know why I didn't bring this up when we briefly brought up Bloodshot, but that preview is pretty good. So it like makes him out as almost this monster like presence, and then you get to see this nicer side of him like afterwards, and it just feels good, and I like it. So
Nice.
I definitely think that looks good. But yeah, both these Valiant comics are good. I would, if you had to choose one, Doctor Mirage is better though. But yeah, and now your turn.
It's my turn to talk about Marvel Comics 1000, which Marvel made a very big deal about, and Ethan didn't read it, which is fine. He doesn't have to. I mean, whatever. No, I enjoyed Marvel Comics 1000. It was a series of one-page stories, and each page. I should say, for those of you unaware, Marvel is celebrating their 80th anniversary this year, and this comic was specifically made to celebrate. It's an 80-page comic.
Well, that and the Detective Comics 1000. To bank on that.
Yes, that's why this is called 1000.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to. Because Detective Comics 1000 sold so well. The Marvel Comics series does not have 1,000 issues. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's a good comic. Each page picks one thing from each individual year and then makes a story about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be like, all right, this is the year Spider-Man was introduced. Here's a Spider-Man story. This is the year Marvel started publishing Star Wars comics. Here's a Star Wars story. And they're all nice little isolated stories. There are a few of them that tie into this larger story, and those are the ones I care less about. It seems like it'll be kind of important going forward. It seems like they really want it to be important going forward.
It feels like they want it to be important, but I don't think it will stick.
Yeah.
I really don't feel like it'll stick. I have not read this entire thing, but I've read parts of it.
I think they're going to try to focus on it heavily next year and then kind of just abandon it.
I don't see all the writers hopping on board. I really don't.
Yeah. But I did have a few of my favorite stories that I wanted to talk about real quick. The one from 1943, Fight for Love, is one that has America Chavez in it, and she's essentially just explaining her backstory. I liked that one. I liked the writing in it. 1966, One Heart, that was a Black Panther story.
Oh. Cool.
There's a nice line. He's doing an interview, and someone is like basically essentially asks him, "What's it like to be a black superhero?"
Oh.
And he says something along the lines of, "The world focuses on the superhero part. America focuses on the black."
Oh.
Yeah. I thought that was like really interesting, and no one wanted to listen to him when he said that. They kind of just shrugged off what he said and kept going, which I thought that was a very interesting part. The next one that I wanted to talk about, 1969, The Farmer. That's a story from Galactus's point of view, and essentially he's talking about Earth only sees me as a threat, but it's like they're a sheep on a farm, and I'm the farmer. I care for this sheep, but it doesn't see me. It doesn't see me until I come to kill it. You know.
I
It was interesting. It sounds silly the way I'm explaining it, but it was well written.
okay. He may think that.
Right.
He can tell himself that.
um, and then the last one I wanted to talk about, 1984. It's We Are Calling Him Ben. That's a very nice one. It's Spider-Man just saves this pregnant lady, and the pregnant lady asks
Oh
him.
yeah. No.
Yeah, I shared the
I
image of that one.
I asked him to show me any that pertained to Spider-Man and She-Hulk. She-Hulk specifically because I knew she appeared in that, so I was like, yeah.
She saves a pregnant lady. The pregnant lady says, "I want to name my son after you. What's your name?" Peter says, "Are you kidding me? I can't just tell you my name. That's why I wear a mask." And she says, "Please, I won't tell anyone." And he says, "Ben."
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to a bunch of panels of different families telling people that their kid is named Ben, which shows you that like this has happened a bunch of times.
Yeah,
which I just thought was so sweet.
that was a cute story.
Yeah. The Spider-Man one, all the Spider-Man ones were my favorite, but that one in particular.
I didn't really like the one where it was MJ and Gwen because it didn't feel right. It felt like they were trying to say that MJ only stayed with Peter because of Gwen.
I didn't interpret it as that was the only reason. I just interpreted it as that was a factor, as it was a larger factor than we realized.
I just don't feel that. It doesn't seem to fit with the characters to me. But I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, the next one is yours.
What is it? Marvel Monsters. This was a one shot. Marvel has a lot of good monsters. I like kaiju. I like Godzilla movies. So I'm like, oh look, new Marvel one shot with some monsters. The summary doesn't really tell you that what it is. It kind of glosses over that. Essentially, there's a little bit of a tiny bit of a story at the beginning. Then they're like, oh look, there's this book, and then it's an art book for almost the entire book. And then at the end, there's a little bit more of a story. And they act like the story might lead somewhere, but I don't think it will. Hey, if they announced this as an art book, I would have been like, oh, that's cool. This is a good art book. But no, they acted like it was a comic with some extra art pages, and that's not what it was. And it was very disappointing. The art is very good, but I don't really care. It wasn't like it's not a good comic. It's a good art book, not a good comic.
Next up, Marvel Team Up number 5. The current Marvel Team Up series is going in arcs of 3, and the current arc is a team up between Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel. Personally, I think it was weird to do 2 Miss Marvel arcs in a row, but whatever. I'm not enjoying this arc as much as I enjoyed the one with Spider-Man, but Clint McElroy is one of the writers, is the writer on this. And like I mentioned before, the McElroy family, they're very funny people. If you are familiar with the McElroy family, you can tell very easily that this is a Clint McElroy production. He throws in his little brand of humor into it. But surprisingly, it's also a nice dramatic story. There's a moment where Miss Marvel, where Kamala accidentally betrays Carol's trust, and Carol abandons their partnership, and that page is really well done. There's a panel of Kamala watching Carol as she flies away, and there's no background, which really helps you feel the emptiness that Kamala feels right there. It was amazingly done. I don't even think there's a panel line around it.
I don't think there is.
Yeah, it was very nice. So anyway, I'm enjoying that arc a little bit. I like Miss Marvel a lot.
Miss Marvel is a good character. I don't like Captain Marvel, but Miss Marvel is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't enjoy comic book Captain Marvel too much. I like movie Captain Marvel, but comic book Captain Marvel.
I think they're both pretty bland, honestly. But yeah.
It's hard for me to like to like comic book Captain Marvel after Civil War 2.
Oh, that's entirely fair. She was horrible in that story. she was completely unlikable. There's no way to justify like most of the things she did after a certain point.
Yeah.
Okay, I like Bendis when he's at his best, and that's not Bendis at his best.
That is not. The next one on our list is one of yours.
Oh, cool. She-Hulk Annual. She doesn't have a series right now, unfortunately.
Which makes it very strange that she got an annual, but you're not one to complain.
I'm not complaining because she hasn't gotten a solo comic for herself in a while, and the only other place she's really appearing consistently is Avengers, and she's basically just been written as the Hulk for a long time, and I don't like that because it's not her character. She's written as She-Hulk here, which I like because she's She-Hulk, she's not Hulk. They're two different characters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was a good comic. It was a little a little humor focused. There's still action, obviously, but humor is a little more at the forefront. Basically, she has her body stolen in this plot by Bullseye, and she has her consciousness placed in this little robot while Bullseye pilots her body. But there's also a Bullseye in his own body because he accidentally kind of cloned his consciousness. I'm not going into that.
That sounds absolutely ridiculous, and I love it.
Yeah. So she goes to try and track down the body and kind of has to like fight/defend it while she's trying to get her body back. It's good. I like it.
Nice. All right, the next one. These last two actually are going to be from me. Sonic the Hedgehog number 20. I'm enjoying what I've read of IDW's Sonic the Hedgehog run so far. I know the Archie run is so iconic. It went on forever. And it feels kind of strange to that's just over now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm enjoying what IDW's been doing so far. I've only read this one and the last one, but this one I felt very character focused. I really, I'm a Sonic fan. Ethan's a Sonic fan.
Yes, I am.
And I'd say the character who shines most in this particular issue is Omega. He's very fun in this issue, but you've also got nice Tails moments. Silver, Cream the Rabbit has a very nice moment. I love her so much in this comic.
I'm not following these comics, but it's nice to see Omega and Cream like actually get a role because they don't show up in the games much anymore.
No, and when they do, they're not given really real personality.
Kind of same with Silver, but he's been a little more active, I'd say.
And I think that's just because he's a hedgehog.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the sole reason.
But the plot right now is Eggman has accidentally. I don't know why I said accidentally. I don't think it's an accident at all.
Okay.
Eggman has created a virus that will infect people and turn them into robots, which the series has been calling Zombots, a portmanteau of zombie and robot. These Zombots,
I assumed.
Yes, these Zombots will attack other animals and try to turn them into Zombots. Sonic has been infected by the virus, but because of his abilities, it slowly spreads, and he's able to counteract it by running.
That's a little silly, but it makes sense, I guess.
But when he fights a Zombot, it'll spread faster. When he runs, he's able to make it not be spread. He's able to actually decrease it.
Interesting.
So it's been this back and forth of fighting a little bit, and then he has to go and run for like 10 minutes. And he hasn't been able to sleep because if he sleeps for too long, the infection will take over. So he's kind of just we get to see Sonic just at this horrible state of he's trying to keep going and trying to keep fighting, but he's so tired, and Shadow's just been completely affected because he was too stubborn to run the treatment off and he wanted to keep fighting.
I can see that.
Yeah. So now Sonic has to fight this Shadow. And there's a fun moment where he's fighting Shadow, and Shadow's he's running, and Shadow's running after him, and Sonic's ha! I can tell that you're not the real Shadow, because if you were, you would know that your rocket skates are way faster. And then, but yeah, it's nice. It's a nice little Sonic comic. It somehow manages to effectively do a darker tone in a Sonic story, way better than any of the games have when they've tried to do that.
A lot of the time when the games try to get into darker territory, it doesn't work. I mean, I feel like
It worked a little bit for Forces, but
sometimes
my view on Forces is that it's the worst good Sonic game. It's a good Sonic game, but all the other good Sonic games are better.
I feel like Forces is a little overhated. Not as overhated as I feel like Lost World is, but it's still overhated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying overhated, not overrated, by the way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say IDW has a speedster now.
Sure, you could say that. And the last comic we'll talk about in segment one, I brought it up a little bit earlier, Spider-Man Velocity #1, the first completely original story to be committed to comic book form that is set in the Gamerverse, which is, I don't like that they're calling it the Gamerverse. And my big problem with the Gamerverse
that's
branding,
unless you count the fake red manga, but I honestly don't buy that that's in the same continuity.
We really don't know if it is or not. I think it had been reported that it was, but I feel like that was misreported because, well, I don't want to spoil it, but there is something that happens in that manga that it would be strange for it to be committed to there instead of in like the sequel to the game.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, I will consider it to be set in because it doesn't necessarily what's the word I'm looking for? Contradict.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily contradict anything that's set in, but I think it's its own continuity.
Just so you're all aware, there's no way to legally purchase this with there's no way to legally purchase this in English.
Yes. I have been reading a fan translation of it.
I've been buying it through the Japanese thing, and yeah.
And I really enjoy it. But anyway, Spider-Man Velocity, it's pretty fun. Issue 1 was kind of just setting up the groundwork. It on its own, it's nothing too special, but it seems to be setting up a pretty interesting story. So, yeah. So that concludes the end of segment 1, where we discussed the comics. So let's go into segment 2, news. We will be discussing this news mostly in the order that it came out. So we know there's a very big story you probably want to hear us talk about. You're going to have to wait till closer to the end of the segment to hear about it. However, this first thing we have to talk about, I think, is still a big deal, and I haven't been hearing too many people talk about it.
I think this is a little more important than people seem to think it is.
AT&T seems not to care about DC. Now, for those of you who don't know, AT&T recently bought Warner Brothers, who owns DC Comics, which is why all the DC movies come from Warner Brothers. AT&T pulled DC from Comic-Con. DC was not at San Diego Comic-Con.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. That's very comparable to Sony not being at E3 this past year. Both of those things have happened this year. It's concern. I know they're two completely unrelated situations, but
there's a difference. There's a very big difference between the two situations.
What I'm saying is there's a very large group that should be at this event.
Yes. They're comparable in that sense.
Yes.
They're not the same reasoning, though.
But AT&T seems not to really want to be into the comic publishing business. I see this going two ways. One, DC stops publishing comics altogether. Two, the one I hope for, AT&T forces Warner Brothers to sell DC to another company. I hope that's the one that happens. If either of those situations happen, because just to see DC just stop publishing comics, I don't
DC know. Is the reason that we're here. I know we're Marvel people, but Marvel wouldn't have happened the way it happened without DC.
Very true. Very
So that's a big deal.
true. So it upsets me that less people are talking about this. This needs way more attention.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think the second scenario, the ideal scenario, I don't see that as super likely because DC makes the money, but not through their comics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the property, I don't see them wanting to sell it.
Yeah.
Unless they want to sell the comics branch.
Aquaman made $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Aquaman, of all things. I mean,
Aquaman. I know Aquaman's not as lame as people used to act like he was, but still.
But
Aquaman.
headlining his own movie. He's not a popular character, or he wasn't. I mean, he's popular now.
He's not Batman. He's not Superman. He's not Wonder Woman. He's not Flash. He's like a little less.
Yes, he's a core member of the Justice League still, but anyway. I want more people to be talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I have on the list, Cloak and Dagger will cross over with Runaways in season 3. There will be an episode. That's very interesting to me. Here's the thing. I'm very far behind on my Marvel TV. I've only seen the first few episodes of season 1 of Cloak and Dagger, and I've only seen the first season of Runaways. But I absolutely loved the first season of Runaways. And the reason this crossover is interesting to me is because these shows come from different networks. Cloak and Dagger airs on television on Freeform, whereas Runaways is a Hulu original. So, and yes, they're both Marvel TV. Disney owns both of them, whatever. But it's very interesting to see these other networks doing this. I don't think Freeform has too much to do with the crossover. They just kind of put Cloak and Dagger on. But it's nice to see that the TV side of things is trying to reconnect itself, as it seems to be kind of disconnecting from the greater, the film side of the MCU. Now, that's just Marvel Television, because as we know, and we'll talk about a little bit later, Marvel Studios is going to be making their own TV shows that will be more MCU proper, because they'll have Marvel Studios involvement and will revolve around characters from the films, most of them. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on that. I think you want to talk about this next one.
Oh, yes. Okay. So Tom Taylor, he's a guy. He writes comics. Yeah. He is the one writing Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and he just went on Twitter one day and he was like, "Hey, all, Spider-Man Day's over. Just so you know, I'm gonna kill Spider-Man in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 12," and I don't think he is. Some of which is we already have confirmed Peter Parker Spider-Man comics from both of the main series past this point.
Yeah.
And even if they're like, I don't know. I just don't know how they want us to believe this.
Including, isn't the next one after that supposed to be a pretty big one too?
The
number 13?
Spider-Man number 13 is one where he's crossing over with Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
And the one
but
after
he's supposed to be dead. So
he's supposedly dead. And I did ask him to clarify, since he didn't say.
Oh yeah, you did have that little interaction with him on Twitter.
So he said Spider-Man specifically, and I was like, maybe he's trying to pull a trick where it's not actually Peter Parker. But then he was like, it's Peter Parker. Like, yeah, but only like a minute after
it could be. Yeah. He's not the only Peter Parker.
So. Yeah, I didn't want to like go on bugging him after that. But there's plenty of alternate Peter Parkers. There's a whole clone saga of Peter Parker.
You may have heard of it.
Yeah. Maximum clonage.
Oh boy. Next we have Kevin Conroy will play a live-action Bruce Wayne in the Arrowverse's Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's kind of cool.
It is cool. For those of you who don't know, he iconically voiced Batman in the animated series. Now, I think it has been confirmed he will not be suiting up in a Batman suit.
Unfortunately.
But he will be Bruce Wayne. which is awesome. And we don't want to talk too much rumors on here because I don't want to be someone who's spreading misinformation. But the rumor, I'm not saying this is fact. The rumor is that Mark Hamill may also appear as Joker in live action.
I would love that.
That would be cool. And he already has a role in the Arrowverse. He plays the Trickster in the Flash, reprising his role from the original Flash series, where he also played the Trickster. The show actually has a lot of fun stuff with that. The guy who played the Flash in the original Flash show from the 90s plays Barry Allen's dad.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Anyway, I love The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. I don't really watch Arrow or Supergirl. I like their characters, but the tones of the shows don't appeal to me. But I love these crossovers. And Crisis on Infinite Earths has so much potential here. What they're doing with bringing in other popular DC media. It's already been confirmed that Brandon Routh will be returning as Superman from his role in Superman Returns, and he'll be playing a Kingdom Come version of the character. Now, this was an easy actor to get because he already plays a character in the Arrowverse, the Atom, on Legends of Tomorrow. But I've heard they want to get at least one character from Smallville to appear. This is the first time that Black Lightning will be involved in one of the crossovers because Black Lightning is set in an alternate universe because they film in a different city. So it's harder to get them crossing over all the time. Now, Supergirl is set in an alternate universe, but that's because it originally started on a different channel, on a different network, before they moved it to the CW. So there's that. But yes, anyway, my point is I'm very excited for Crisis on Infinite Earths. Next, there was a trailer for Wonder Woman Bloodlines, the next DC animated film. Here's the thing, DC makes good animated films.
They do.
But they make too many animated films.
I have not watched the majority of them because of how many of them there are. So,
and it's just another Wonder Woman origin story. There has to be other stories that can be told about Wonder Woman.
I'm not big on Wonder Woman, but I'm certain there are.
Yeah. So. The live action film was great. It was amazing.
It's my second favorite of of DC's films.
It's my first favorite. Of the current run, Dark Knight is infinitely better than anything else DC has done.
I'm not a big fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm not saying they're bad movies, but this is a conversation for another day.
But yeah, I know I'm not going to see Wonder Woman Bloodlines. I know it.
I like the look of it. It looks good, but it doesn't seem like we need it. I feel like, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like in the trailer there was some more blue on her costume, and I really liked how that looked.
And the thing is, DC has great animated movies that I love. Flashpoint Paradox was pretty good. Justice League War was a really good one. Stuff like that. But I don't think I'll be seeing this one. Next we have Spider-Verse directors, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, will be working on a quote-unquote handful of live-action Spider-Man TV shows.
This could mean a lot of things.
This could mean... Now, with some other news we've gotten recently, that I won't touch on too much until we get to that point, that may be difficult. Because Sony does not own Spider-Man's TV rights. So I would imagine it would have to be a similar situation to what Fox did when they wanted to make X-Men TV shows, where they had to work directly with Marvel Television to get them to happen. And they made Legion and The Gifted. I've seen the first season of Legion. It's amazing. I need to see the other 2 seasons. Gifted wasn't for me. Sony and Marvel are at a bit of a standstill right now. So these shows may not be happening anymore. We'll see. And we'll discuss that a little bit more when we get to that point.
Sony's last attempt at a Spider-Man TV show was canceled prematurely because of some sort of rights negotiations. Disney has not handled Spider-Man TV shows very well. But I don't want Sony to start making a good one, if it is a good one, and then have it canceled prematurely because of rights negotiations. So...
next we have a little bit of news about Deadpool in the MCU. He could be switching ratings with an R-rated solo films and then appearing in PG-13 team-up films. I think that would work. Honestly, it might be a little difficult because you'll have an audience there for the PG-13 films with Deadpool and be like, I like that character, and then not be allowed to watch his solo films.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're trying to work with, trying to figure out what to do. But I think it would be very detrimental to stop having his solo films be R-rated. It's a big part of the Deadpool film brand.
Yeah.
That it's R-rated.
Yeah.
It would hurt those films to be PG-13.
I don't think it's impossible to make a good PG-13 Deadpool movie, but I think it would be tricky for a studio to pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
Very tricky.
Very tricky.
Yeah.
Next, we have a little bit more news about the MCU. James Gunn said that Howard the Duck will have an actual impactful role in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We've seen him in 3 films now, 3 little films that have had cameos, and I'm really excited for him to become a real character now.
He looks kind of weird in the MCU.
He does. Now, his Guardians 1 design was weird. I like his design in Guardians 2 and the little cameo he had in Endgame.
I cannot remember what he looked like in Guardians 2.
It looked a lot smoother.
Okay.
A lot less creepy. So... I'm excited. Howard the Duck's a fun character. The first real Marvel film, you can say the Captain America serial from the 40s, but that's not a movie. That's a series of things.
Unfortunately, the first Marvel movie is Howard the Duck.
Yes. Not a good film, but an entertaining one.
Perhaps not intentionally.
No. Well, they intended for it to be entertaining, but not in the way that it was. Next, we have Deadpool is going to get a new volume of comics starting in November. We were talking earlier about our problems with Deadpool comics.
Mm-hmm.
I will definitely pick up the first one, but if it doesn't hook me into the series, I'm not going to keep going.
I kind of just stopped caring about Deadpool altogether at this point.
Yeah. So I want it to be good, but
yeah. You see, I don't see why they keep trying to push Deadpool into a comedy-only role, because they literally made Gwenpool specifically for that, and I'm not sure if they're going to do the same thing here, but it feels like a little too late to push him back into his older role too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Balance.
We'll see where it goes.
So I don't know what they're doing with this. The artist was a little bit of an odd choice. It might work. He might work well for Deadpool. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on his name, but I know who he is.
Disney is reportedly unimpressed with New Mutants. New Mutants has been in development hell for so long. It was supposed to have already come out 3 times. We have passed 3 different set release dates for that film.
That's bad.
I don't know if it'll ever come out. I don't think those reshoots have still been done yet. But that's the weird thing about it is people were excited for this film.
Mm-hmm.
People seemed interested in this film, myself included. And the whole point of the reshoots was to build more on what they knew people liked from it and give us more of what we liked instead of fixing problems.
Yeah.
So it's concerning.
Will this movie release?
Will it ever come out?
Get ready, Lost Media community. Lost Media Wiki entry coming in.
Yeah. Another series we have, Yondu will be getting his own solo series in the comics starting in November. I don't care. I like him in the movies, but I don't care about him in the comics. I'm not going to read this one. Yeah, is right. Krypton canceled at Sci-Fi and no Lobo spinoff.
No Lobo spinoff?
Yeah, Sci-Fi canceled Krypton, and there was supposed to be a Lobo spinoff that also got canceled. I haven't watched it. I didn't really understand the point of the show. It was a drama about Krypton. It seemed like they were kind of trying to do what Gotham was doing,
mm-hmm.
which I had heard good things about, but I don't think it accomplished that.
Yeah.
Superman, I feel like just Superman lore is so simple that it's hard to add things to it. Whereas opposed to
the basic lore is very simple.
Exactly. Whereas opposed to what Gotham had going on, they could play with all this Batman backstory. What about when he was a kid and stuff? It has Bruce Wayne as a kid, and you bring in some of the other villains are in there, and that has potential. I just didn't see any potential for Krypton, so I'm not really surprised that it got canceled before its time. Next, Dark Phoenix ends its theatrical run as the lowest grossing X-Men film ever, to the surprise of no one. It was really hard to try to market that when people already knew that it was going to be the last X-Men film.
It also didn't look good.
They didn't need to care about it. That
the marketing
it was going to get rebooted into the MCU later.
There wasn't a whole lot of marketing.
There wasn't a whole lot of marketing because that was around the time when Disney was buying Fox, and I think they were just pushing that film out and getting it. They said, "Okay, we're not going to cancel any projects that are in production or post production, so we'll get that one out." But yeah, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I have not seen it.
So. It's not a good film, but I expected way worse.
That trailer did not look good.
Yeah. Next up, the Runaways in the comics are becoming Doc Justice and the J-Team. Marvel did some tricky marketing with this. They initially announced Doc Justice and the J-Team as a brand new team to try to grab people's interest. And then they said, oh no, the Runaways are going to become Doc Justice and the J-Team. And I cared way less. And I already didn't even care that much. So
I don't like
I like
that name.
I like the Runaways show. This is definitely a temporary thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they're permanently becoming, because it's still in the series that they're in is still called Runaways. It's not like they're launching a new series called Doc Justice and the J-Team. The series they're in is still called Runaways.
It's such a dumb name.
It is, yeah.
I mean, all right. I've read some Runaways that just didn't stick with me for very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've read a couple of the comics here and there. The show is very good. Next up, Sony buys Insomniac Games.
What? This is video game news.
Video game news, but Insomniac Games published the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Oh, it ties back in.
We came full circle.
Oh,
we did it. High five.
I did it.
This could very potentially be interesting for the sequel to the Spider-Man game. It could shape a little bit. Now, I don't know if it's going to shape too much because Marvel has started to become very careful with their game rights, and they've launched the Marvel Games division, and Marvel Games works with each of the different developers on the different games. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to change too much, but it is interesting that Sony has bought Insomniac Games. Let's save that one until we're talking about the larger topic. Let's go down to some Avengers gameplay was shown off. Speaking of games, the Square Enix Avengers game, I'm very excited for it. We got to see how each of the 5 main characters play, and honestly, the only one I'm not really that excited for is Iron Man.
That kind of sucks, because Iron Man's the one I was like, ooh, I want to play as Iron Man. Well, I guess Hulk, too.
Yeah, Hulk looks very fun to play as. Thor looks super fun, and Black Widow looks super fun. Captain America looks all right, but Hulk, Thor, and Black Widow are the ones that look the most interesting to me. And I'm excited to see how other characters they introduce later down the line will play. I think in the story, I think the first extra character that's going to be added will be Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, just based on the little bit of story that they showed in the gameplay trailer focused around her.
She could be fun to play as.
She could be fun to play. She'd be very unique. Mm-hmm. So it looks like they want to start with these core Avengers, minus Hawkeye, and then immediately try to start diversifying who the characters are. Because we've also seen Hank Pym is going to come in later as well, and that can be very interesting as well.
Yeah.
Especially if they do some levels specifically based around him and environments. Time for the big one. Spider-Man.
Hashtag save Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man may not be in the MCU anymore. The big rumor going around is that negotiations are still on the table.
We don't know that.
We don't know that for sure. And of course,
they seemed pretty firm that they were over.
Yes.
But...
Now, the reason that I would believe that they're not over, just my own personal reason I believe they're not over, is because the news didn't officially come initially from either of them. Mm-hmm. They came from some inside source, and then Sony and Disney had to comment on that, mm-hmm. which would lead me to believe that there's still options.
Yeah.
Now, this is still very shocking news. Right after Far From Home becomes Sony's highest grossing film ever. Mm-hmm. Thanks to it being part of the MCU, and it definitely helps that it was the movie to come out after Endgame. It's surprising. It really is surprising to see that, and it does hurt a little bit because of where Far From Home set up his arc to continue. Now, if Spider-Man really is for real out of the MCU, it's been confirmed Tom Holland will still play Spider-Man with Sony. So I would hope that it's the same Spider-Man. And I saw on Reddit someone had an idea for how they can make this work. If Marvel and Sony can agree together for one last thing and let Spider-Man have a cameo in Doctor Strange 2, the end credit scene can have Peter Parker and Aunt May approaching Doctor Strange and informing him that it's impossible for them to live their lives here anymore, and Doctor Strange can portal them into Sony's universe. I wouldn't, if it has to happen, I think that can be a way to make sure that it's not jarring to the story. I think.
I don't know.
But obviously I don't want it to happen in the first place. But what is also interesting about that is Tom Holland will still appear as Spider-Man in Disney Plus's What If series. Now, this is because that's a TV show, and Marvel still has the rights to Spider-Man on TV. And What If is also not canon. It's based on the MCU, but it's literally called What If. It's alternate tellings of what could have happened differently. So that's very interesting. But that's pretty much all we have to say about Spider-Man. It's a very big topic, but I don't know what else we can say that hasn't already been said.
I don't want to say anything that could potentially be wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do want to clarify this. This podcast releases on, if you're listening to this on the release day, it's Saturday, September 7th. At the time we're recording, it is Thursday, September 5th. If any other news has come out either this afternoon as of recording or tomorrow on Friday, we obviously don't know. It would be very funny if something big happened. Mm-hmm. And we would have to wait a whole month to talk about it. But, yes. But anyway, that's the end of that topic. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about games. The first DLC pack for Ultimate Alliance 3 was announced. Will be called Curse of the Vampire, and the characters that it is adding are Blade, Moon Knight, Punisher, and Morbius. Morbius is a very interesting choice to me, but I understand the inclusion of the other three. But Morbius it feels like such a strange, lesser-known character to include.
Well, he will be getting a solo movie.
He will be getting a solo movie.
So that might be part of what?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I
don't think it'll be good. But
Morbius used to be a little more important than he has been, so I don't know. He hasn't been important for a long while.
Yeah. Anyway, that'll release September 30th. I
like the game. I'm not a huge fan of this roster pack.
I've already bought the DLC pass, so I'm going to have it no matter what.
I am looking forward to the Fantastic Four one they hinted, because they basically say groups like Fantastic Four in that pass thing. So,
next one. This one pertains a bit more to you.
Yeah.
The Shazam #7 delay. How long has that comic been delayed? I don't read that series, but how long have they been delaying that?
I can't remember if there was one There was not one in August. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
There might have been one in July. I honestly can't remember if it was July or not.
Mm-hmm. Have they explained why it's being delayed?
I don't think they have, not to my knowledge. DC has had a problem a little more recently of delaying things, especially with like their event Doomsday Clock, which has been going for like what feels like years now.
I think it has been actual years, like 2 years.
Yeah,
I would say.
I think it has been.
If not, then it's close to it.
It's a lot of delays there. I don't know what's going on the inside. It might have something to do with the movies because the Shazam film tried to adapt from the New 52 stories, which there weren't a lot because Shazam stories were told like at the back ends of like Justice League comics as like a second little story, and they like added together into a bigger Shazam story. I don't know why they chose to adapt New 52 first, because that means they're like pretty much caught up, because that's when the whole reset thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have pretty much whatever they have in this current, like, I'll just say rebirth Shazam series.
Mm-hmm.
They might be restructuring it so it can make a better movie. I don't know what's going on here. My guess is it has something to do with the movie.
It's possible.
That's my best guess.
Yeah.
Either that or there's some like internal struggling with the team making it.
Possibly. The next piece of news is the Joker and Spawn will be in Mortal Kombat 11. And I gotta say, why does the Joker look like that?
He doesn't look good.
His design is so bad. Spawn looks alright. And these characters are being added alongside the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, based on his appearance in the newest upcoming film. So it's some interesting crossover characters to add for sure. I know I'm missing a couple, but
Rest in peace, Shaggy.
yes, that we almost got that. I feel like that was very close to being real.
I wish it happened.
But anyway, the Joker design is just horrible. Probably the worst design for the Joker I've ever seen.
He appeared in a different Mortal Kombat game with a more functional design.
And here's
as
the thing.
Joker.
Here's the thing. I'm pretty sure it's the same team that makes Injustice.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get it.
I'm not sure if it's the same team that makes Injustice, but I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it is.
If not, then Injustice and Mortal Kombat are at least still very closely connected to each other. Even the first Injustice game had Scorpion playable in it.
They could have literally taken a model and tweaked it a little to fit the look of the game.
Exactly. And they definitely would have had access to those models.
I don't know. More work with worse results. So
yeah. So we have a whole bunch of Marvel news coming out of D23.
No, too much.
We got a nice little convention happening in D23. A lot of it is about the Disney Plus, because Disney wanted to show that off. You know,
those corporate meetings.
It was kind of the very official unveiling of Disney Plus. So we got a little bit of news. U.S. Agent will be a character in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
So that's a bit of a surprising move. I didn't think they'd touch said character.
Mm-hmm. Well, my theory around this is I've heard that part of the focus of the series will be the government doesn't want Falcon to be the new Captain America. So U.S. Agent, I think U.S. Agent is going to be who the government wants to be Captain America. That's my idea.
All right.
Next up, WandaVision, which is looking very interesting. We've gotten a little bit more news about that show recently.
Rename it.
What's that? Hello?
Please make it a different name.
There's some weird creature here in our recording room, begging for the name of WandaVision to be changed. I can't do anything about that. Weird, strange creature.
Do it anyway.
Strange creature. How about you go bug Marvel Studios and leave us to do our podcast?
I'll bug them on the internet.
Okay.
And in your comments section.
Okay. Can you get out of our space so we can make our podcast?
Okay.
Thank you. What a fun bit we just went on.
That was so dumb.
Please leave that in. Anyway, Darcy Lewis, who was in the first two Thor movies, and Jimmy Woo, who was in Ant-Man and the Wasp, will be characters in WandaVision. Now, it's beginning to look like WandaVision. At the beginning, we're not going to be in the real world. We're going to be in some construction created by Wanda, which would explain why Vision is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps why some of these characters are here, even though they have nothing really to do with the lore of those characters.
Mm-hmm.
It could be interesting. It's been described as it's going to start out as if it were a regular TV family sitcom, and then we're going to start to notice some strange things happening, and it's going to get really weird, and then come back into the MCU, like the MCU proper, towards the end of the series.
Huh.
Is what I've come to understand. So that's what leads me to believe it's Wanda perhaps using her reality manipulation powers to create a more ideal world for herself where Vision isn't dead.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, that the name Wanda Vision could have an extra meaning because yes, it's about Wanda and Vision, but it's also a vision that she's creating.
It always sounded like some retro TV show to me, and the one image they used to market it looked very, very 50s.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going for. They're going for like a 50s
sitcom
at the beginning. I'm very interested in it. I wasn't too interested at first. I was like, yeah, I like these characters, but I don't know if they can headline their own thing. But I think it might be one of the more interesting Disney Plus shows to me now. But speaking of Disney Plus shows, we got a few announcements for a few more. Miss Marvel is getting her own show, and she is confirmed to also appear in movies. That's so exciting. I love that character. I'm concerned about how she may look in live action.
I am very concerned. I think it'll look scary. I don't want to be scared.
But a couple other shows that got announced are Moon Knight and She-Hulk.
I like She-Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah, that's exciting. We don't really know too much about it, so
I don't even care about the MCU or Disney Plus, but I'll probably get it to watch She-Hulk.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of footage got shown off from What If. We got to see that it's a 3D animation, which I was hoping for 2D animation.
Yeah, I was too.
But I think it'll still be a nice, fun little thing. What do we have next? Spidey and His Amazing Friends got announced as a preschool series. I almost said pre-cool. As a preschool series featuring Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Gwen Stacy. So I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not in preschool, but
I'm not watching it either.
I think using these characters for a preschool series is very nice. We know that kids love these characters, so to give them content specifically made for them, it's nice. I like that it exists.
So, have you seen some of the angry comments about this show made on the internet?
I have not.
There's some people who are legitimately angry that this show for toddlers exists.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Speaking of new cartoons, Disney Channel announced Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I'll check it out when it comes out.
Yeah.
They're not characters I know too much about.
I care a little more about Devil Dinosaur than Moon Girl, but it's fine.
Yeah. What do we have next? Black Panther 2 got a release date for May 6th, 2022. We do not know yet if that'll be the next film after Thor Love and Thunder or if there will be a movie that winter in between them. I thought it was strange that was the only new movie they announced.
Yeah.
I would have thought that if they were going to announce a movie, they would have talked about at least the rest of the films that year. But
I will be excited if they announce a Champions or Ironheart film.
In your dreams, Ethan.
Yee.
Maybe Phase 7.
Maybe Phase 7. Okay.
Bit more MCU film news though. Black Knight will be in Eternals, played by Kit Harington, which we knew a few days before that Kit Harington had been casted for an MCU role, and some people were saying it might be Black Knight. I was hoping it wouldn't be, just because, not because I don't want to see Black Knight, but because I don't want Kit Harington to get typecast in this medieval knight role. For those of you unaware, he's from Game of Thrones. Not a show I have ever watched, nor plan to ever watch. Oh, hey, look at that. The number of people listening just dropped a little bit. Sorry, I don't care about Game of Thrones.
I don't care either.
I told that weird monster thing to leave. Oh, wait, that was just Ethan this time. Yeah, neither of us care about Game of Thrones, but I'm sure he's a great actor. I've seen things with the actors from Game of Thrones, and almost anything that has had an actor that people told me were from Game of Thrones, I liked their acting. So I'm sure that show has good actors on it. So that's got me a little excited. Marvel Comics did a little panel to cover their 80-year history, and then at the end they announced a new comic that will be coming out in December called Incoming. It will be a 90-something page comic and is supposed to shape the future of Marvel Comics, particularly 2020. I think it will be following up a little bit on Marvel Comics 1000.
Probably.
It's my idea.
They're trying to build something up here. I don't feel like the reader base as a whole really cares.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just talking about myself, I promise.
Yeah.
I don't care either, but yeah.
I'll get it, probably, but
I might ignore it.
It'll probably go at the bottom of my priority reading pile.
Yeah, it just feels like a forced editorial thing.
Yeah.
I don't like forced editorial things.
They showed off a little bit of Avengers Campus for Disney parks. You know, Disney World will be adding a Marvel Land. We now know that it will be called Avengers Campus. And we'll just have like different buildings featured around different characters. Different parts of the Marvel lore. It looks interesting. I think I would like a few more details on it. I would need to see it in person myself. Hopefully I can get that chance to see it someday. But if I ever do go back to a Disney park, I would be excited to go see that. I'm not currently excited, as I don't see myself going anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm not one for amusement parks, so I don't really have anything here to contribute.
But that's it. That's all we got from D23. At least all the big stuff. There may have been a few small stuff that's not really worth talking about. But the Spider-Man cartoon is going to do Maximum Venom.
Yee!
And we've gotten a bunch of Venomized designs for characters that have not been Venomized before. I'm a huge fan of Ironheart's Venom design. Now, has Ironheart been in that cartoon previously? Or will this be her introduction to that cartoon?
I think this is her introduction. I have not been paying much attention to that cartoon.
Yeah, it's not a... I probably won't watch this, but I like the character designs from it. Because I don't like that cartoon.
I'm assuming this is taking things from Venomized. I never read Venomized, so I can't tell you what's going on there. But I'm excited, even though I don't really like the cartoon as it stands. I'm very happy to see emo, edgy symbiote Ironheart. Very happy. She getting some respect in the realm of animation. So,
yeah.
I like it.
A few days ago, I think, like earlier this week, Spider-Man PS4 got a Game of the Year edition that it was $40 and it included all the DLC. That's nice, I think. Get a lower price point with all the stuff in it. We'll get more people playing it, and it's a good game. People should be playing it. So, if you haven't already played Spider-Man PS4, I'd recommend picking up the Game of the Year edition.
This is where I'd put my PS4 if I had one.
Joker got a final trailer and an 8-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah. Here's my thing. I don't know how to feel about this film. It looks like a good film, but it does not look like a good Joker film. Is the easy way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why this film is the Joker. If you took all these ideas and just made it not about pre-established characters, I think it could be a very, very good film.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're trying to push this character as being the Joker, he doesn't feel like the Joker. It's
Yeah.
just you,
If you're going to adapt something, you have to
now
You have to be careful.
I'm all for taking creative liberties and putting your own spin on something, but it has to still be able to feel
It has
the
to have
source
the it
material.
has to have the soul of the source material, or else it fails as an adaptation in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. There can be exceptions.
I'm not
But
crazy
it's
about
hard
the
to
Joker.
find those.
I'm not crazy about the Joker, but
yeah,
he's a good villain for Batman.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason that he's Batman's most iconic villain.
He has a huge legacy. Respect it, please.
Yeah.
This looks like it would be an okay independent film dissecting like the psychology of someone, but it doesn't really.
You may be very disappointed in what I'm about to say next, then, because there is no intention to dissect psychology in this film. Joaquin Phoenix, who is playing the Joker in this film, went on record and said that he specifically worked to make his iteration of the Joker nearly impossible to diagnose with anything. Which essentially means he's just not actually portraying mental illness. Because if he can't put symptoms together to be able to diagnose someone with something, then he doesn't have anything. So they're trying to make it this story about a man with mental illness who becomes the Joker, but
well, from what I understand, the Joker himself is not supposed to be able to be diagnosed with any like existing condition. But I still feel like you should try.
Yeah.
Don't just use that as an excuse.
Yeah, it just feels weird.
I would have liked to see them do a deep dive of psychology. They might go into that, and this is just something that seems to contradict it, but it really doesn't. But I don't know.
It feels like it's a movie made for edgelords.
It kind of does.
A little bit. Which makes me sad, because the Joker can be an interesting character to explore.
His fans scare me.
Oh, yeah. Joker fans.
I don't want to get too into that, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to say this. If you genuinely ship the Joker and Harley Quinn, I probably don't like you. Just going to put that out there. Up next, speaking of some DC stuff, James Gunn's Suicide Squad found a few new cast members: Taika Waititi, Nathan Fillion, and Peter Capaldi. Those are some pretty big names, Taika Waititi particularly is very attached to Marvel right now, as he directed Thor Ragnarok and will be directing Thor: Love and Thunder. He plays Korg in those films. I love Taika Waititi's movies. It is very interesting to me, though, to see him being in a film he didn't direct.
Mm-hmm.
He usually when he acts, it's in a film he directed or is part of a franchise that has a film he directed. So maybe he's trying to branch out into more purely acting. I don't know. Also, it's been said that James Gunn wants Pete Davidson to cameo in the film. He was good on SNL. I think he's still on SNL, but they don't use him as much as they should. He's a funny guy.
I can't really comment on that. I have not watched SNL really.
And the last thing we got was a little teaser for Birds of Prey. Now, what I didn't realize when they started playing, when we watched this together, is the way they're putting it out in theaters. They're playing it right after the Joker trailer, and you're supposed to think it's the opening to It Chapter 2, hence the balloons.
Mm-hmm.
So you're supposed to think that the movie's starting.
Oh, I noticed the red balloons, and I was wondering why they were doing that when it was relevant.
You're supposed to think that the movie is starting, and then Harley Quinn comes and pops the balloons and says, "I'm so over clowns," right after the Joker trailer just played.
Uh-huh.
That's fun. I like that.
The trailer itself gets a fat meh from me, but that's a little bit funny if you see it in theaters at least.
Mm-hmm. I personally, I'm wearily excited for this film because I like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She was one of the few good things about the original Suicide Squad film from 2016. So I'm glad they're continuing with her iteration of the character. I like Harley Quinn as a character. I think she's fun. I would like to read some more of her comics, but I feel intimidated to jump into her series. I don't know. Jumping into a DC series feels way more intimidating than jumping into a Marvel series. I feel like DC is just worse at letting you jump in wherever you want.
The big thing that makes me agree with that is all that resetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's it for segment 2. Let's hop into segment 3, talk about some adaptations. It's pretty low this month. We didn't have a superhero film this month come out, but we have a couple things from July that we would like to talk about. We've both started playing Ultimate Alliance 3, and it is so much fun.
It's a pretty good game.
It's a very nice beat 'em up. I'm glad the Ultimate Alliance series has come back.
Yeah.
I hope it can continue even. And the Ultimate Alliance games have never been too big on their story. But
Yeah.
They prioritize gameplay and letting each character feel unique, which they do. Each character feels unique, so that's nice. I started watching Boys, which I didn't even realize at first came from a comic, but it's good. I've seen the first 5 episodes, so I still have 3 more to watch, but it is a very, very good show. Very dark, but I love the concept of, like, yeah, the superheroes act as a corporation. There's someone who's in charge of them. They sell out their own film rights and stuff, and then they're corrupt. So we kind of get to follow this from 2 points of view. We get to see this new superhero who's hopeful, Starlight. She's hopeful, and she comes in and she's like, I'm going to be part of this great superhero team, and then learns how horrible the corporate practices behind the team are. All the other superheroes are corrupt. There's a moment, I don't want to skip a little bit if you want to avoid spoilers, but there's a moment where a superhero comes into a crashing plane. Well, the plane has been hijacked, and they take out the hijackers, but the pilot is also dead. So just decides not to even try to save anyone and leaves. He leaves the plane. And you see all the people crying out for him to come back and save them. And there's this lady who says, at least save my daughter, the child. And there's another superhero with him. And so she's about to actually grab the child, but he tells her, no, we can't save her. She'll tell everyone that we abandoned this plane. And so they just let all these people die. And so the main characters are these normal people who don't have superpowers that are trying to take them down. It's very good. And then the very last thing we're going to talk about in today's episode, I'll turn it over to Ethan.
Oh, so for those of you who don't know, DC Superhero Girls makes DC money. So Marvel, they wanted to copy that with Marvel Rising, and it's not that great. They botched some characters. But there was an episode that came out, and the focus is on Gwen Stacy in this episode. I honestly can't remember a whole lot that happened in this episode because it's not very good. It's still better than most of the other episodes, but it's kind of bad. The only part that really I thought was actually all that good was where they temporarily tried to do a sort of aftermath of a thing, but they didn't dwell on it for very long, so it didn't really land much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't see it.
None of the characters really feel like the characters that are from the comics. They just feel like cheap imitations, so it's not that great.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for this very first episode of Thought Bubble. I am very happy to begin doing this, sharing my thoughts with you, being able to have these conversations with my friend. So please subscribe to our podcast with whatever you use to listen to your podcasts. Huge thank you to Anchor for hosting a free platform that allows us to put out this podcast. And yeah, that's about it. I will